this is Lauren Gibbons, and today I'm here with Casey Kelly. Casey is 32 weeks pregnant in her third trimester, and we're going to work through a third trimester sequence on hands and knees that I recommend all my clients do before bed. This sequence is going to do a couple things. One, we're going to stretch out the calves, we're going to release the hips and the low back, and we're also going to work on some hip openings, so some external rotation of the thighs to open up the front of the pelvis and the front hip region, and then some internal rotation of the thighs to open up the back of the pelvis. So we're creating some balance there. This is going to allow baby to move into optimal fetal position to make for an easier and quicker birth. So Casey, we're going to start with some breathing. I recommend doing this umbrella breath every night before bed and then jump right into your hands and knees sequence. So you're going to take your hands, wrap your thumbs around your ribs, your fingers are in front, and then just close your eyes. Take a few natural breaths just to start. And just notice where in your body you feel those breaths. Good. Now I'm going to have you move all of your attention to your rib cage. So if you visualize your rib cage as an umbrella, it wraps all the way around. You're going to start to breathe in and open up that umbrella. So inhale, expanding the rib cage as the umbrella opens, and then exhale, closing the umbrella, rib cage closes. Good. Do that a few more times for me. Good, so we're really helping the diaphragm here move in its full range of motion. So often, especially in the third trimester of pregnancy, we lose that range of motion in the diaphragm, which makes it really difficult to take a full deep breath. We're also helping here to open up the rib cage and the little tiny muscles that are in between all the ribs. Good, and then I love doing this before bed because it helps tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest nervous system. So we're helping bring in a little bit of relaxation and calm before we lay down to try to sleep. Good, 2 more for me, Casey. Beautiful. Bring your hands to your knees and then just roll out the ribs a little bit. Good. So you might notice here you have a little bit more of a range of motion in the rib cage. Switch directions. Go the other way for me. Good. And then we'll move right on to hands and knees. So I always recommend a blanket underneath the knees, especially if you're on a hard floor. So you can have the blanket folded like this, or you can use a beach towel or double fold it like this, depending on how much cushion you feel like you need for your knees. Spread your fingers really wide for me. Good, and then really press down into your thumb and your pointer finger, into that L shape. Yeah, good. And then slightly roll your shoulders back and your elbow, the inside of your elbows forward. Yeah, good. And then once you're here, you're going to rock your hips from side to side. Just find a little bit of movement laterally with the hips. Good. And notice how the hips are feeling today. You can shake out your head and your neck. Let your neck go. Good. Good. And then Casey's knees are just a little bit wider than her hips here since she's later in her third trimester. Now go ahead and start coming into some cat-cows. So on your inhale, lengthening your spine, lift your chest, and then exhale to curl round in like you're giving your baby a hug. Good. Keep flowing through those with your own breath. Nice. And then I want you to really focus on this movement of the pelvis here. So focusing on the tuck of the tailbone and then the spread of the sitting bones. Good. So we're helping to actually open up the pelvis as we come into the cow shape. Yeah, and then really hug in baby on the cats. Good. Just 2 more. And on this next one, as you round, rock your hips back towards your heels like you're coming into child's pose. Good, and then inhale to rock forward. Exhale, round back. Good. So these are flowing cats. I love these movements before bed. Yeah, and we're really helping to release out the low back as we press back into the child's pose. Good. Last two for me. Yep, and then last one. Good. So we're going to take some of the weight off of the wrists here. Bring your forearms down onto those blocks. Now, if you don't have blocks at home, you can stack up folded up or rolled up towels to make a little bit of height here. You're going to be about 6 inches off the ground. And then let your head and your neck release. Good. And then lightly hug in baby here. Yeah, so we don't want the belly to drop towards the floor. We want to make sure we're still supporting baby. And then you can see Casey's hips are stacked directly on top of her knees. Good, so a couple of options here. You can stay exactly where you are. You can rock your hips from side to side. Good. And then show us, Casey, what hip circles look like. So she's going to circle her hips forward and side and down. I love these movements, especially before bed. This is great prep for labor too. You can do hip circles throughout early and active labor. We're helping rock baby around and really find that optimal fetal position. Good. All right, bring your hips back to neutral and then slide the blocks away. Come back to your tabletop. Good. So we're going to do a calf stretch now. So Casey, extend your left leg straight back behind you with your toes tucked under. Good. So she's got a nice long line here from her hip down to her heel. And then walk your hands forward just an inch or two and then press down and forward into your hands. So this is like downward facing dog arms. So engage your shoulders here. Good. And then rock your hips back just a few inches. Yeah, so she's really getting into her calf and her hamstring here. Good, and she's finding this sense of opposition where the hips, the sitting bones, the heel are pushing back, and then her hands are pressing forward. Good, just 2 more breaths here. These calf stretches are great if you have cramps in the middle of the night or Charlie horses, or if you have a tendency to get some swelling in your feet or ankles. Good. Come back to all fours for me. Circle it out a few times in between. Good. And then same thing, second side. So right leg extends back, toes tucked under, and heel pushes towards the wall behind you. Good. Hands press forward and down. Neck is long. Yeah, nice. Got just 2 more breaths here. Good. Come back to your tabletop. Yep, and then let's take some of the pressure off the wrist. So sit back on your heels. And then circle out your wrists. So bring your forearms together, interlace your fingers, roll them out. Good, and then give those wrists a shake. Good, so if you're someone that has wrist issues, you can also roll up the front of your mat and use that to press the heels of your hands into, or you can come up onto fist instead of palms facing down. All right, so make your way back to your hands and your knees. I'm gonna have you on the high level of the blocks. Good, and then step your right foot forward to the outside of that right block, and then heel toe your foot out. So her toes are pointing off of the mat here, and she's opening up through the inside of her right thigh, inside of her right hip. The right knee points out and off to the side. And then she's keeping her chest lifted. Really nice. Good, now we're gonna make some opening, some space in the back of the pelvis by taking the foot out and the knee in. Good. Couple more breaths here. Good. Bring the foot back so it's in line with the knee, and now come into your hip circles. So this is a great place to circle out the hips. Again, making space in the pelvis and helping baby move into that optimal fetal position. Good. Let's come back to hands and knees. And then we'll switch sides. So now your left foot steps forward, heel toe your foot out, so the left toes are angled out. Good. Now we'll move the foot out and the knee is in. Good. So she's got her chest nice and lifted here. She's also finding a bit of a stretch in the right hip flexor. 2 more breaths here. Good. Now parallel the shin and then circle out your hips. Good. Come back to your hands and knees. All right, we'll do one more each side. This time we'll add in a half split. So step your right foot forward. Yep. And then take the right block to the outside of your right foot. Good. So now the blocks frame that front foot. Yep. And then tuck your left toes under and lift your left knee up off of the mat. Good. We'll stay here for just 2 breaths. Keep your chest lifted. Nice. And then drop that left knee down and then walk your blocks back so they're in line with your shoulders. Start to straighten that foot. Good. Lift your chest. Good. This can be really intense, especially if you have a lot of tightness in the hamstring. And so this is a great pose to practice your breathing in. So really plug that right femur bone, the thigh bone, into the right hip socket. Yeah, so the right hip shifts back in line with the left. Nice. All right, last breath here, and then bend back into the right knee as you walk the blocks forward. Good, and then step back to tabletop. Yep, shake the hips out, swish them around a little bit. Yeah, and we'll do the same thing second side. So left foot steps forward. Now move the block to the outside of the left foot. Good, chest stays lifted. Yep, and then when you're ready, come into that higher. Yep, nice. So she's really toning that right thigh, really active in that back leg. Yep. Good. Now drop the back knee down and then move the blocks back. You're making your way into half split. The front foot is active. Her toes are pointing back towards her face. Good. And her chest stays lifted. Now plug the left femur bone into the hip. Yep. So the hip moves back. Good. Last 2 breaths. All right, come back to your tabletop. Beautiful. All right, so final pose here. We're gonna find extended puppy dog pose. So let the blocks go off to the side. Yep, and then walk your hands forward. Your elbows are straight, so it's like downward facing dog arms. Drop your head, drop your neck. Yeah, and just let go. Good, so she's stretching in her shoulders here, in her upper back. This is a great pose to close out practice before you go to sleep. All right, you can push yourself back to sit back on your heels. Awesome. Thank you so much, and namaste.